Superhero outfits can inspire awe. You flip through the pages of a comic or see that hero artistically drawn on a cover and think, yeah, that's the comic I'm going for today. Their outfits can be functional, sexy, beautifully illustrated, or just straight up cool. But that is not what we are going to be talking about today. Nope. Instead, we'll be talking about some of the worst dressed superheroes, or in some cases, just one of their worst outfits. Everyone is entitled to make a fashion faux pas every now and again, right? I'm commiserating with them in my awesome, jawsome shark sweater, so yeah, here we go. So put some eye drops in and get ready to behold some of these eyesores with me. And if there is a costume that you find so hideous and so heinous that you think it should have been included, please feel free to share it in the comments below. Number 10. Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts, whose name is actually Jonathan Hart, so a John instead of a Jack in his everyday life, is an underrated hero really, though he could do with a wardrobe update. His name makes him sound like he belongs in a Las Vegas casino, while his powers have nothing to do with card tricks. He got his powers from a fuel created by his father called Zero Fluid. He was covered in it as a result of a scuffle between him and an evil corporation who wanted to steal his father's scientific discovery. This resulted in him being granted powers including zero energy blast, superhuman strength, durability, and flight. But regardless of how cool he is alone, his costume makes him look like he would fit in more in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland than the pages of a comic book. He looks like one of the Queen of Hearts goons. With his half-painted face and his card-inspired tunic, his outfit from the 70s is in need of an update. I would love to see his outfit reflect just how cool of a hero he is. Number 9. Black Bolt and Lockjaw. The presence of Black Bolt, Inhuman Leader, and King and his dog Lockjaw might shock you for appearing on this list. Why did I add him here? Okay, let's just do a pan up from the bottom of his costume. So everything is good so far. Yep, standard spandex outfit here, cool pattern on the suit, and then wait for it, there. What is that on his mask? That is a tuning fork. It is true that Black Bolt sometimes uses his tuning fork in the comics to emit energy or channel his powers, but he also seems to use his powers just fine without the fork. It isn't a part of his body after all, it's just a part of his costume. Also, Lockjaw also has a tuning fork on his head, which to be fair looks as adorable as it does ridiculous. So you might think, but wait, what does Lockjaw use his tuning fork for? He doesn't have the electron harnessing speech center that Black Bolt possesses, right? You're right. Lockjaw is primarily known for his teleportation powers. The tuning fork for him can be used to channel and focus these powers. For someone who is using their speech, I could kinda see that this tuning fork might make sense, but for Lockjaw's powers, it also helps? Wait, WTF? Is this an Inhuman thing? Cause if so, why isn't everyone wearing a tuning fork on their head? Where is Medusa's tuning fork? Number 8. Captain Ultra. Captain Ultra doesn't just suffer from sometimes being an annoying character who admittedly even other supers would like some at distance from, he also suffers from a case of a bad costume. Poor guy. His costume is problematic for the reason that it just has like too much going on. We are first introduced to Captain Ultra in the Fantastic Four Volume 1 issue 177. Another honorable mention from that issue is wannabe supervillain character Osprey, who wears wings despite not having any flight powers. Or any powers at all, sadly. Back to Captain Ultra. From his debut to his short time in the Defender series, his costume in the 60s and 70s always had just too much going on. Green helmet, blue cape, orange pants, red and yellow vest, blue underwear over the top of it all. All the iconic 70s colors rolled into one heinous outfit. Ugh. Number 7. Invisible Woman. After choosing to merge with Malice's persona to prevent Malice from taking control over her own body, Sue Storm underwent a radical change in the comics. While I kind of enjoyed the verve, sassiness, and occasional short temper she exhibited, including a scene in the comics where she turns residents of the tower's clothes invisible, using her powers in an attempt to cause them to stop chastising her and criticizing her younger brother Johnny Storm, which was pretty comical. A change that also came about from her transformation was one that was pretty ridiculous. Her ditching her old uniform and creating a new one with a cutout 4 in its chest to show off cleavage, and a ridiculous tummy window. This leotard is certainly an outfit, but one that seems a little risky. I mean, I know she's the Invisible Woman, but even when invisible, exposing your stomach to an enemy just seems like a bad call. Number 6. Hercules. Obviously Hercules is from an ancient era, and as a result, his looks can be considered dated to some, or I really think of them more as classic looks, and I find them more timeless myself. Except for during the Crossing event. Get ready to open up the Pandora's box that is time in Marvel comic history, cause there are a lot of awful outfits that came out of here. This Hercules costume involved a tank top with the Avengers A on it, some brown pants, and a belt. With his tank top tucked in and belted, I mean, just imagine that look in the real world, like outside of the comics, and it's utterly ridiculous. Not to mention they had Hercules shave for this outfit. This modern take on Hercules in the world of the 90s was just a travesty to his character, who is known for his iconic gladiator-inspired looks. I also have to give an honorable mention to the time Hercules' costume was just his birthday suit. Yep, it was super short-lived, and to call it a costume per se might be a stretch, but he was sort of training others using a Greek-inspired athletics competition while he was wearing it, or wearing nothing. Even offering to wrestle other heroes while in the buff. Ugh. Number 5. War Machine. We are staying put in the Crossing event for this one as well. If you are unfamiliar with this event in Marvel history, it involved a storyline where our superheroes went up against Iron Man. For a hero who is so celebrated, Tony Stark certainly does get battled by his fellow heroes more than you'd think. In this story, Tony is revealed to have been working for Kang for years, which results in the heroes having to team up to stop him. The end result is an older Tony Stark being converted back to good and sacrificing himself so that younger Tony from his past, who is also fighting him, can take over as the Tony of the present. Yeah, it's a confusing one. Anyways, as a result of Tony being evil, Rhodey looks to distance himself from Iron Man, which means him getting a new suit, which looks a bit like a group of like space bubbles. Also, what is wrong with his helmet? Why is it so round and small? Like, what happened to the shape of James's head? Number 4. Stay gold, Iron Man. Before we had the amazing suits that belong to Tony Stark today, I mean, we could make a few lists based on the best of Iron Man suits if we haven't already. We had the original Avengers version of Iron Man. You may remember this suit from the Iron Man origin story in the MCU, but it looked even less cool and a lot more Tin Man in the Avenger Volume 1 series. So much so that when Iron Man went to save people with it, they didn't even like the look of it. But Tony Stark had a plan to fix this. Update the suit, build a new one, get some cooler gadgets? Nope, nope, and nope. His plan was to paint it gold. And the weird thing is that it worked. Granted, this costume only lasted for a short time in the comics before Tony did end up creating a new suit, but still, it is astonishing that this gold version of his Mark I eyesore somehow made it exponentially better to anyone who saw it painted gold. What? Number 3. Thor. And back to the Crossing we go. Sorry friends, I obviously need to make a top 10 worst superhero costumes from the Crossing list. If you want me to delve more into this comic book event for awful looks, let me know in the comments. Or if you want to just delve more into massive events like the Crossing in terms of comic lore. During this event, everyone looked awful, but I am not sure if there was anyone worse than Thor. If you thought the flowing locks we see in the MCU on Thor were a bit much, you're gonna love this. His hair was drawn long enough to look like it could just reach past his butt. He is covered in random leather straps, they don't seem to be useful for anything. He's also covered in metal spikes, and Mjolnir for some reason has a chain hanging from it. He is also basically wearing a green crop top. Yep. Number 2. Star Sapphire. A lot of Star Sapphire's outfits have been known for their revealing nature. The sometimes villain, sometimes hero is one of Hal's exes and comes to us from the Pink Lanterns, who stand for love. So it kinda makes sense that they would often prefer to, show off some skin. But there is showing off some skin, and then there is showing off some skin and, breaking the laws of physics. The outfit I'm referring to is one that is a mystery when it comes to how it stayed on. This outfit involves full arm coverage and a very large collar, but about nothing else. Her abdomen is exposed, and who knows how that costume manages to give her enough support in the chest area. It certainly is a strange leotard, which also comes with a headdress that wraps onto her cheeks for that extra coverage. you know how it is. Sins of Star Sapphire? Oh, that costume was a sin. Number 1. Wonder Man. Which costume does one even pick for Wonder Man? They are all terrible. The one of the worst in my mind is when he simply wore a red blazer and sunglasses as a costume, like over a black t-shirt and jeans. Oh, and don't forget that gold chain. Wow. This look comes to us from the Mighty Avengers series, but there have been countless other gaudy appearances from Wonder Man, including his West Coast Avengers look, and let's not forget all the pouches he was given during the 90s in his self-titled series. What is it with pouches? Like, you're a superhero fighting crime, like what do you need to keep in there? Your keys? Some band-aids? Chapstick? Why do people have so many pouches in the 90s? Thanks for watching, Nerd Squad. Was there an outfit listed here that is one of your favorites or that you find downright beautiful? Let us know in the comments below. After all, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Every time I say that phrase, I think of beholders from D&D. Yipes. While you are on your way down there to spark debates in the comments over who is the worst and who is the best dressed, make sure to tap that like, click that subscribe, and ring our bell so you never miss any of our nerd content here at Top 10 Nerd. Until next time, I'm Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube.
Well, hey there, ya hosers. We talk a lot about superheroes on this channel, and we've discussed a bunch of the coolest heroes with awesome powers. But there are a lot of heroes that were dealt kind of a crappy hand in terms of powers. Sometimes they're just straight up useless, sometimes they're just outclassed by other powers. Sometimes they turn you into a street. Yeah, look forward to that. Anyway, I'm Ron Mackenzie LaFergie with Top 10 Nerd, and here is my list of the top 10 most useless superpowers of all time. Number 10. Now, I'll take a step away from comic books with this one. Half the powers from the show Misfits are just awful. I don't know if you watch this, but it's a really great British show about young adults who get random powers after a strange storm. Some of them are great for sure, like time travel and invisibility, but others are less great. For example, one of the main characters is given the power that any guy she touches has an irresistible urge to have sex with her, which she gets tired of pretty quickly. Or one guy who ends up killing a bunch of people has complete power over dairy products. If you haven't watched the show, you should, not just for the plethora of useless powers, but because it's a super funny show. And don't be sad when Nathan leaves, Rudy is really great too, seriously. Okay, I'll stick with comic books from now on, I just need to do a shameless plug for Misfits because not enough people know about it. Number 9. Doorman. Doorman is a mutant who has the ability to use the Dark Force dimension to act as a human door to let people go through him to the other side of something. It sounds awesome, right? He's basically a teleporter. Well, not really, because he can only let people through things he's touching. Meaning he can, say, get you into your house if you forgot your keys, but not much else. Any number of heroes can do what he does, either by stealth or by brute force, so he basically does the job of a sledgehammer, but slightly better. While this power does have its use in certain circumstances, there are a ton of powers that could do the same thing, but are useful for other things. Number 8. Black Bolt. Black Bolt has perhaps the most powerful power on this list, but it's so powerful that it becomes terrible. His power is his voice, causing huge shockwaves capable of incredible destruction. This sounds like an awesome power, but like, he can't turn it off. The slightest sound out of him, even just a little grunt in his sleep, is gonna make a big boom. So while he's one strong dude with a pretty crazy power, he basically lives in fear of accidentally making a sound, which is pretty lame. Number 7. Red Bee. Red Bee fought crime with a stinger gun and a group of trained bees. His favorite bee is named Michael. While technically without superpowers, I would argue that the ability to train bees as well as he did requires a certain amount of power, or at least comic magic. However, I feel like there are any number of things that would be easier to train and more effective in combat than bees. Number 6. Danny the Street. Danny the Street is named Danny, and he is a street. Yep. He's named after the drag queen Danny LaRue, since LaRue is French for the street. Traveling around the world to comfort and help those who need it, Danny the Street communicates through various banners, signs, and graffiti on the street / him. This power does end up being somewhat useful, especially when he grows to the size of a planet, but honestly I think the benefits are outweighed by the drawback of being a street. Number 5. Dollman. Dollman is basically a way worse Ant-Man in that he can shrink and grow, but he can only shrink to about 6 inches and he can't grow any bigger than normal size. While he does keep his own strength when he's 6 inches tall, it isn't really an advantage because he loses a bunch of reach. Like when Ant-Man shrinks, he gets super small and hard to see, but shrinking to 6 inches is still super visible and you can just gets smushed. The only perk is that he's able to ride a Great Dane to get around, which would be awesome. Number 4. Matter Eater Lad from the planet Bismol. I did not make that up. Matter Eater Lad, like the rest of the people from his planet, has the ability to eat anything. This is an ability that his people evolved when all food on the planet was rendered inedible. While this is certainly useful for someone on a planet with nothing edible, as a superpower it's pretty much useless. Oh, he can eat through the door! You know what else does that? An axe. Or a foot. And that way you don't have to eat the stuff. The only good thing about it is he's a pretty cheap date. You could split the dish. You eat the food, he eats the plate. Just don't expect him to save the day because he's kinda crap. Number 3. Infectious Lass. As her name would suggest, Infectious Lass has the power to infect those around her with all sorts of diseases. This is because she comes from the planet Somathur, where diseases are rather prevalent even though the people on the planet are immune. Basically, she carries a bunch of diseases that she's immune to, but the people of Earth are not. Which would be awesome if she was a supervillain, but she's a good guy, which is pretty sad because it means she needs to stay far away from other people. She's actually accidentally infected people in the past, so she's really worried about doing it anymore. And this power is not only useless, but it's incredibly detrimental and it basically ruins her life. Number 2. BEAK. BEAK was a mutant in the X-Men comics whose mutations just made him straight up worse. It totally messed up his face, giving him a weird vulture face. It made his bones hollow, which would make him weaker but give him the ability to fly, but his wings don't work properly, so he's basically just a weird looking guy whose bones will snap if you look at them wrong. Such superpower, much wow, so amazed. Number 1. Color Kid. Color Kid is a member of the Legion of Substitute Heroes, and he is the definition of a superhero with a useless power. After being hit by an extra-dimensional ray, Color Kid gained the ability to change the color of things. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say about this. He's awful. Sure, there are times when this could be useful, like if you run out of color ink in your printer, but I cannot believe Color Kid is a thing. That's it for today. There are tons of useless powers, so if you want more, I would be happy to do more of these lists. If you like this video, please like and subscribe below, and let me know your favorite terrible superpower in the comments below.
Put simply, superheroes and villains alike are only as strong as their weaknesses. With these limitations put in play, it allows for more in-depth and exciting stories because it adds not only an element of surprise, but also an element of suspense. That being said though, there are some weaknesses that are a bit questionable. What is going on, all you nerdy folk out there? My name is Jack, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. If you read the title of the video, then you've probably already guessed it, but today we are going to be taking a look at some of the silliest, weirdest, and most of all, dumbest weaknesses that superheroes have been shown to have in the comics. Let's get right into it. Number 10. Martian Manhunter and Fire. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I am also not the biggest fan of fire either, and I would absolutely hate being set on fire for so many reasons. But for such a powerful hero who can shapeshift at a molecular level, change his entire genetic makeup to let him pass through solid objects, withstand ferocious attacks, or bend light waves around his body, it just seems a little silly, right? Not to mention that he comes from Mars, otherwise known as the Red Planet or the Fire Star. So why is this one of his biggest weaknesses? Well, long before Martian Manhunter even existed, a race of aliens known as the Burning caused some serious damage with fire in order to create their offspring, which, needless to say, people weren't too happy about. After the Guardians of the Universe separated the offspring into the White Martians and the Green Martians, they were all imbued with a congenital pyrophobia, aka a fear of fire. So it kind of makes sense why he's so afraid of it. Not only does it physically hurt him, but it also scrambles his most prized weapon of all, his mind. This fear and weakness is so intense that when he's exposed to flame, he has the capacity to self-destruct, either combusting into bits or dissolving into rivers of Martian liquid. Want to know more about the Martian Manhunter? Well then check him out in his first appearance in 1986's Justice League of America, number 255. Number 9. The Flash and being too fast. At first, I've got to say this one confused me so much because that's kind of the Flash's whole thing, right? Well, when it comes to Barry Allen, his speed might be his greatest strength, but being too fast puts his life in mortal danger. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, we see the Flash use his super speed to thwart the Anti-Monitor's evil plan, but the speed vortex he creates to stop the villain's antimatter cannon from firing is so fast that it sweeps the Flash away along with it. He ends up being stranded for 23 years in the Speed Force, you know, that mystical energy field that gives all the speedster their powers, and spends that whole time running and trying to figure out how to get back. Basically, what happened is that Barry ran way too fast for his body to handle and he atomized himself. Thought to be dead by his closest friends, including Wally West, who took up the Flash mantle in his absence, Barry's apparent death was a huge shock for everyone, and also entirely his own fault. Check out more of the Flash for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1956's Showcase, number 4. Number 8. Power Girl and Raw Materials. You'd think that being weak to kryptonite would be their only weakness, considering how easy it seemed for people to get their hands on it. But Kara Zor-El from Earth 2 actually had another pretty big weakness at one point. They were vulnerable to unprocessed natural materials such as branches and rocks for a short while. This also includes stone, dirt, and sand. Basically anything that can be found on Earth that isn't man-made. In Peter David's Supergirl Volume 4 number 16, she gets knocked to the ground and impaled by a pretty big tree branch, which, in her defense, would put anyone on the ground. Supergirl helps yank out the branch, and with this weirdly sociopathic smile on her face, she asked, "What, are you vulnerable to wood?" It took a second, but after she was no longer in pain, she replied, "Worse, to any raw, unprocessed natural materials. So, sticks and stones really can break my bones." God, dumb joke and even dumber weakness. Check her out for yourself in her first appearance in 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, number 5. Number 7. Adam Strange and Forced Deportation. Who knew that archaeologists could also be superheroes? Well, apparently Adam Strange did, because that is exactly what he is. He inadvertently found himself on the planet Ran and was gifted with all the powers of a superhero in Mystery in Space. And it's not exactly explained why. Sounds pretty great, right? I mean, what could possibly be his weakness? Well, it's not actually his fault or in his control. This life of bliss he lives on Ran is frequently interrupted by his rather inconvenient transportations back to Earth, where he has no powers at all. The technology responsible for bringing him to Ran, the Zeta Beam, only allows him to remain there for as long as it's transmitting back to Earth. And as it takes the beam a few good years to reach Strange's home planet, it's not exactly easy to catch a ride back. Strange might have been recruited as Rand's savior, but his timing issues really make this role more of a temporary gig. He could be midway through his heroics before vanishing without a single trace. He even left his wife to nearly get eaten by a tiger once. Luckily, as Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series clarified, the Ranians are more than capable of looking after themselves when Strange isn't around, and thank goodness for that, because I wouldn't be relying on Strange much either. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1986's Outsiders, number 6. Number 6. Human Torch and Asbestos. Now, don't get me wrong, Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, is a force to be reckoned with. Not only can he create, absorb, and manipulate fire, which is pretty awesome on its own, but his Nova Flame is hot enough to vaporize the particles of anything in his way, whether it's a bullet, a building, a bad guy, etc. Interestingly enough though, his powers can't seem to penetrate asbestos. Now this doesn't seem like much of a weakness now, given that asbestos is now banned across most of the world, but back when the Human Torch was first created by Stan Lee and Ernest Hart in 1963, it was a much more common thing, as it was used to insulate pipes and wires, soundproof rooms, and even make cheap garden furniture. In Strange Tales number 111, Asbestos Man came into play, dialed up Johnny Storm, and arranged a showdown between the two. The Human Torch wasn't really all that into it, but he agreed nonetheless and showed up completely underprepared. Asbestos Man used his super asbestos suit, a fire retardant shield, and a fisherman's net to go toe-to-toe with the Human Torch, and he wreaked havoc on the Human Torch until he developed mesothelioma and needed an oxygen tank to stay alive. Moral of the story, kids, is always prepare for anything, and please, don't breathe asbestos. Check out more of the Human Torch's story, starting with 1961's Fantastic Four, number 1. Number 5. Wonder Woman and being tied up. Superheroes don't come much more kick than Wonder Woman. She's an extremely skilled warrior with enough power to take on the gods and win, and she's shown time and time again that she can hold her own in the world of comic book heroes. However, the Golden Age Wonder Woman was bound by an interesting Amazonian rule that really did not work in her favor. Known as Aphrodite's Law, it states that when an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world. This gender-specific weakness lasted from Wonder Woman's debut in 1942 right through to the mid-80s, when DC finally retconned this out for good. This weakness is less literal than metaphorical, meant to demonstrate Marston's argument that women are only vulnerable to men when they choose to be. But still, I am very glad that this was gotten rid of for good. Check out Wonder Woman more for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1942's All-Star Comics, Volume 1, number 8. Number 4. Gladiator and Self-Confidence. Cal Arc, aka Gladiator, is arguably one of the most powerful comic book heroes ever, gifted with planet-shattering strength, super speed, heat vision, frost breath, and a few psionic abilities as well. He's a superhero anyone would love to be. However, even though he is loved, he never really learned to love himself, and that is sometimes his biggest downfall. Although low self-esteem isn't exactly fun for anyone, trust me, I know, for Gladiator it's actually a fatal weakness. His power fluctuates according to his confidence, as seen in Dan Abnett's and Andy Lanning's War of Kings crossover in 2009. Get him to doubt himself or even his abilities for 1 second and he can be defeated by opponents with far weaker abilities than him. A prime example of this is shown in War of Kings number 3 when Rocket Raccoon manages to convince Glider his gun will hurt himself and despite withstanding far worse in the past, succumbs to self-fulfilling prophecy and is beaten. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's X-Men number 107. Number 3, Daredevil and Loud Noises. Now we all likely know this, but Matt Murdock's loss of vision took away the natural gift of eyesight that we all take for granted, and replaced it with echolocation, an uncanny radar sense that allows him to basically see things through sound. Unfortunately for many heroes, their greatest strength can also be their greatest weakness, and such is the case for Daredevil, as his extreme sensitivity to sound can completely incapacitate him. In Daredevil Volume 2 West Case Scenario, he is subjected to a high decibel ultrasound, 120 decibels to be exact, by the dastardly Purple Man, who knows his weapon is excruciating for a man of Daredevil's gift. Daredevil's head spins and he looks like a man under a sorcerer's spell, leaving him completely vulnerable to a follow-up attack. The same can actually be done using intense smells as well, since his sense of smell was also heightened after losing his eyesight. Although Daredevil can and does go toe-to-toe with pretty much anyone in a fight, he will get utterly emasculated by a stink bomb or a supersonic sound. Check out more of Matt Murdock for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Daredevil number 1. Loud noises! Number 2, Green Lantern and Wood. If you're a bit confused, that is totally okay. This is not a weakness that is common across all of the Green Lanterns, it's specific to the very first Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Despite being armed with a magical ring and a spectrum of pretty much limitless powers, Scott seemed to have another fatal weakness other than the color yellow. He first realized that this might be a problem for him after he was hit in the face with a wooden log, and then after a series of wins and victory laps, Scott realized tree bark might be his potential undoing. Put a little more succinctly, items made of wood cannot be lifted or broken by energy from the ring, nor can barriers of emerald energy stop projectiles crafted from wood. Apparently this vulnerability to wood was because the green flame was an incarnation of green growing things, and thus could not be turned against them. Guess you could say he, can't get wood. Check out the first Green Lantern for yourself, starting with 1940's All-American Comics number 16. Number 1, Captain Marvel Jr. and his own name. Poor Freddie Freeman. Out of all of the weaknesses on this list today, he probably drew the shortest straw because his weakness is his own name. If Captain Marvel Jr. tries to introduce himself to a superpowered ally or for some reason feels the need to say his name in the middle of a battle, he'll instantly be transformed back into Freddie Freeman, a ordinary young lad who relies on a crutch to walk. Or if he speaks his superhero alias aloud in the guise of Freddie Freeman, he'll transform into a shimmering beacon of muscly justice and give himself away. Jerry Ordway tried getting around this flaw during Captain Marvel Jr.'s sporadic appearances in Teen Titans between 1995 and 1998 by having Freeman refer to himself as CM3, since he was one of the 3 members of the Captain Marvel family at the time. Also, he could avoid accidental transformations, but that change didn't really stick around. Honestly, for someone who inspired many of Elvis's onstage looks, that is one weakness that I don't know if I can overlook. Check him out for yourself in his first DC appearance in 1995's The Power of Shazam, number 3. Well, that'll be it for this video, everyone. Think I missed one of the dumbest superhero weaknesses out there? Well, let us know in the comments below some of your favorites, and we might just continue this list with a part 2. As always, my name is Jack. If you haven't already subscribed to Top 10 Nerd to stay up to date on all things nerdy, do that right now, and while you're at it, why not ring that notification bell so you know whenever we upload a video.